Well, look, I was brought up in a large family on the 10th of 12. There was 5 boys at the tail end of that family. My sisters were all older. We were brought up on a farm. We travelled a long way to school. We worked hard when we were at home. My parents were great believers in the work ethic and in teamwork.
He loves his kids to bits and they adore him. Each and every one of them does.
You know, at times it's exhausting, particularly with 6 of them, but the magic of children is something that I've always loved, and I would hope that my children had some sense of that.
When we first got married, I was a house surgeon. I had my first child and took a year off, and then I went to do my diploma in obstetrics at Wellington Hospital. And so Bill's role then was to become the house husband while he was at Treasury. So he stayed home and looked after our eldest son Luke. When we had littlies, we had a lot of nappies to change. We just used cloth nappies. We were sort of eco-friendly ahead of our time. And Bill ran the nappy bucket. That was his job.
Probably one of the tests for me with the kids was in 2003 when I lost the leadership of the National Party.
It was difficult, but what was great about Bill is that he went away, he licked his wounds, and then he got back off the canvas and got up and kept going again.
Because I'd been telling my kids that when you get knocked down you shouldn't get up again, I knew that whatever choice I made, they'd read about it in the paper. Even if I explained it to them, they'd get other people's versions. So it was one of the reasons I stayed on in politics then, was simply to act consistently with what I'd been trying to instill in my children.
He's been a huge inspiration to me.
He has the brain, he has the will, and he has the motivation to do something.
His ability in terms of both economic and social issues.
He likes the sport. He's mad keen on rugby. He actually, as he tried to point out to me, he actually understands the rules.
He participated in the Kepler Challenge, which is 60 kilometres. I was convinced he was going to have to be helicoptered off the track. I kept hearing helicopters and waiting for him to be pulled out of one, but he actually managed to come in and finished it.
But this year New Zealand tipped into recession.
We ended up with regular crisis meetings, and I can recall the first Treasury briefings that showed New Zealand heading into a never-ending spiral of debt.
I do remember lining up the kids and saying, you know, take a long hard look at your father because he's going to look a bit different from now on. I just thought it would prematurely age him. But I'm happy to say that in actual fact he seemed to flourish.
The first thing that struck me was that he was very calm. So we were getting advice that said, look, you know, unemployment could dramatically rise, debt could dramatically rise, that there was a huge amount of unfunded programs we'd inherited from the Labour Party, that, you know, that we couldn't afford the sort of pathway we were on. And actually the global financial crisis was uncharted territory for the world, let alone for New Zealand.
The whole idea of this stuff is you have to be able to support New Zealanders through something like the global financial crisis. But you've got to do it in a way that actually you're not jeopardising the future of the country's finances. That's not providing resilience. Bill was very aware of that.
We needed to do a couple of things. One is shore up the system where that was required because we had financial collapses and so on going on, and the other was get the government finances under control.
This country would have $100 billion more debt on it by now if it wasn't for the steps that Bill took.
Now, most other countries in the world aren't in surplus now. If you look at Australia, for example, yes, they actually did quite well through the GFC. They haven't had a Canterbury earthquake, but they're in a $40 billion deficit right now.
We are at the point where this great country is just going to take the next level of thriving and success, and you can see it as far as our economy is concerned. You can see it in those businesses, and you can see it in the education results that we get for our young people.
So his big thing was not to worry about the little stuff that really doesn't move the dial. How do I really make those long systemic changes?
No one knows more than Bill English in terms of government. I mean, he's had so many years in politics.
So we could see in the justice system just both how much it was costing, how poorly it was performing, not because the people in the sector don't work hard, but because if people are constantly revolving in and out of prison, that's really not achieving a hell of a lot. And so he would invest heavily in working prisons and education programs and drug and alcohol rehabilitation programs, things that he knew would be long-term drivers of breaking the cycle of dependencies. He was the social investment program. He was the guy that established it, he was the guy that understood it, and he was the guy that drove it.
So where government works on a very much an annual cycle, you know, someone is cheap this year because we just pay them a benefit and that's what we do, but actually if they're going to be on benefit for 30 years, that's failure. If they're going to re-offend after they come out of prison, that's a failure. If they're 14 years old and they've been in contact with the police and we do nothing about it, actually that's a failure. But if we put in the support and the expense and the expertise around, you know, events that get government involved, then we can change the course of those events and it can have a lifelong impact.
He knows how to take that opportunity and turn that into ways of changing the lives of people that have been struggling and people that we want to see have a much better life.
So it can be quite frustrating sometimes as a minister, because he's had experience of certain community organisations that you might meet. He understands the machinery of government, what's actually happening on the ground in terms of people's lives. And I've never met a politician like him who has that kind of capability.
I think his biggest strength would be his intellectual grunt combined with a great capacity to get things done.
It's a much bigger driving force in Bill, that he wants to see New Zealand as a better country, and he's quite prepared to dedicate his time and his life to doing that.
From an economic perspective, again, we're dealing with one of the greatest finance ministers across the world in the last couple of decades. He got us through the GFC.
He has a really big vision for what he's trying to achieve.
What is required to keep it going, to keep New Zealand progressing, to encourage New Zealand small businesses to invest and grow and get out there and compete and win on the world stage.
There is no one better in our history to lead that reform.
We understand that being in government is not about us, it's about what we do for people, making a difference to their lives, because National is a party that cares about people and gets things done. I strongly believe that if we can build on our current success, we can offer better opportunities for everyone.